Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Sound check. Can you hear me?
Loud and
Yes.
clear.
Yes.
Good morning.
All right.
Yes, it's good.
So happy Friday, everybody. So wanted to start this topic by kind of asking everybody if you've had a deal that went into contract fall apart in the past month, quarter, year. Maybe you can put in the chat what the reason was for the fall through, because I've seen a elevated, almost historic level of transactions falling through. And I want to kind of diagnose the patient first before we can kind of work on the solution. So let's throw that in the chat so that we can customize this appointment or this meeting. Appraisal didn't meet selling price. So we only have one in there. All right, I'm gonna go to our managers like Marilyn, Dave, Julie. Are you seeing transactions falling apart, and what are you seeing?
Yes. Hi, Rob. Hi, everyone. Inspection issues. People are getting very picky with their inspection and they're using it to back out. And I'm wondering if a lot of it is buyer's remorse.
The buyer's remorse. And I've seen, Marilyn, some really talented agents lose control of buyers. Have you seen that on our end? So I would like to do this and blame the other side, but unfortunately it's not exactly what I'm seeing, because I'm saying here's a buyer who said they would do this and now they're out of control. Are you seeing that, Marilyn? Yes?
Definitely, yes.
How about you, Dave? Are you seeing any fall through?
Yes, we are. I will say one thing that I always strive for is to try and keep the deals alive, help our agents keep the deals alive whenever possible. But sometimes it just gets out of hand, a buyer out of control, seller out of control. But that's kind of always my goal, is to help my agents keep their deals together.
And I actually saw to try to pull this up here. This was I guess it was a self-serving one, but it says the new rules of generational wealth. Why buying a money pit at 30 beats waiting for the perfect home at 40. That was just published today. And is there anybody I thought I saw Darren from the Coil team. Anybody else from the Coil team on? Is that Danielle there? Yep.
Danielle's here. Yep.
So
I'm
Danielle,
here too.
okay. So Deborah, were you surprised at like what most people got away from the event we did?
Yeah, I was surprised that a lot of them didn't seem like they had too much information. It seemed like we gave them a bunch of information.
Yeah.
And it seemed like overwhelmingly they were like, what was their takeaway? And they said it was the cow, right?
Yeah, the cost of waiting, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an impactful way to get leverage without manipulating people, right? Because we don't manipulate, but if we give them the information, they can have a more balanced approach to whether or not they're going to accept what I'll call a used house, right? I know we don't call it that, but a previously lived in home is not going to be a builder mint condition.
Correct.
Let me just see here. What are some of the other fall through reasons in the chat here? We have, so the old dreaded wife didn't like it. And that shouldn't be fallout. That should be no contract. Inspection issues.
Rob, I'll jump in. I'm finding that in my market anyway, the attorneys are becoming more involved. So even when a buyer says they're not going to over negotiate the home inspection, and you get this letter from an attorney that over negotiates a home inspection, the response I get from the buyer, because I just had a deal that died. It was a co-broke deal, but they said, "Oh, my attorney advised me to handle it this way, and that's what I'm going to do." So the attorneys are the fly in the ointment.
And you were the listing side, right?
Correct.
Rob?
Correct.
Now, was the agent, in your opinion, competent?
Well, competent and She had a very high opinion of herself.
So
And
Bobby, I'm going to say the pause speaks volumes.
she might be a very good agent, but she really she made herself more important than the client, I think, and keeping the deal together.
Okay. And let's see, inspection seems to be the high topic. Cindy, we had a very painful one in Arizona, right? Do we
Right.
know why that one? I'm out here in Phoenix. We're just celebrating the success of the Arizona team, and Tyler and Cindy congratulate the agent on a very nice closing. They're like, "Well, that's great, but I just had a $72,000 commission fall through." And do we know why that one? Do we know why that one fell through by chance?
I know that they were having issues with inspections, but I haven't seen the final paperwork on it, but I'm gonna make an assumption that it was related to inspections. And I think part of the problem that I'm seeing in the market right now is that the buyer agents are not giving their clients any kind of expectation of the fact that the house is not new and that there may be some things to expect. Everybody's thinking we see these lists of 40 and 50 items that the buyers want repaired or replaced or new appliances, that kind of thing. So
I think maybe it's kind of like the change in the market where buyers really had limited choices in many of our markets. Now they might have buyer's remorse because there might be another opportunity that's available, right? Help with two ROVs. What's an ROV
Reconsideration of value.
for the appraisal?
Yeah, so actually one of the agents that reached out wasn't even with us. She's at a different brokerage, but she does very well. And she said, "Hey, can you look at this for me?" And I've never lost a Tidewater. That's another terminology that's for when there's a VA appraisal that comes back not at value. So you have to do the job for them. It's best to do it up front. The appraisers right now, there's a lot of new folks in the game, and so they're just looking at MLS only. So if you have, updates, receipts, dates, if you have anything that can prove the value on this last one, we won, but the comps they were using had much less acreage. And they didn't even factor that in. And this particular market we're basically on a peninsula, so there isn't a lot of vacant land. And the land value's gone up substantially. So if you have something, it was, 0.75 acres versus the comps that are, much smaller, that's something that they need to factor in for value. And we did win, but it delays closing, causes apprehension, and sellers, if you educate them, and they were priced right. We had comps, like you have to do that as well, give those comps. But it can be, it just can be some extra legwork done up front that can prevent that from happening.
Right. So is anybody, when you have multiple offers on a sale, putting in a appraisal waiver in this market, or that's completely gone by the wayside?
Not as much currently for me in Florida.
We definitely are.
Sometimes.
Glenn, you're putting in an appraisal waiver. Who else is doing it?
Arizona, we're doing it sometimes if it is a multiple offer scenario. Not as much as we were when the market was crazy.
Yeah, same here.
You can't with VA. Like it's not.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, you're that's a unique scenario because you have the VA addendums. How about before I go into this, Deborah, did you have a question, or is your hand just raised for some other reason?
Sorry, no, I don't have a question.
No, Deborah Gibbs.
This Deborah. I had two fall through because of financing. They were approved by the credit union, and then we didn't get paperwork, so I had them go to a regular mortgage broker, and they couldn't finance it. And the third one, the agent came back and requested more commission. I said no. So in the last day of the inspection period, she went out and found him another house.
Wow.
Yeah, that was,
Wow.
yeah.
So,
And we went through the inspection and the appraisal, and everything was okay.
so Deborah, did you get what was your opinion of that agent when you accepted the offer? Was there a sign?
I have worked with her before and our deal did not go through. So when I saw her name come up, I just held my breath. So she has a reputation of that, of not working with the other side.
Right. So maybe in scenarios like that, we need to practice safe real estate and try to build in more guardrails to make it harder to take an exit from the transaction. And did you only have one offer on that property, Deborah, or no?
No, I had three contracts. Two of them didn't go through because of financing, and this was the third one. So now it's back on the market again for a fourth contract.
Gotcha.
Mhm.
I saw, it looks like Glenn stepped away, but Glenn has a team, and if he's building it in, I'm just curious if you're getting a lot of resistance when you put that into a offer, Glenn, across the board. Or
Resistance. What's the resistance on, Rob? I apologize. I missed the initial part.
So you said that you're putting in like gaps for minor, so if there's a $429,000 sale and it comes in at 420, I'm assuming that you're going to want to eliminate the ability to cancel that transaction for a $9,000 gap.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's structured into the deal from the start. And in our market, almost everything is generally over asking unless it's mispriced dramatically.
Okay. So you're just putting that in, and if you role play, I make an offer on your property. It's 410, 415. I put an offer at 429 or 629, whatever that magnitude is, Glenn.
Yep.
How do you respond back with that?
So when in a multi-offer situation, typically what I have is we have this comparison spreadsheet that we put together based on the terms, and it's built by AI, line item by the contract. So it extracts the detail from the contract and says offer price, escalation clause, end of day cost, things along those lines. We'll take that then, and when the client picks the number one offer that they're going to choose, we take the terms that are what we call risky, and we send an email back to the agent and say, hey, we would like you to confirm with an email forwarded from your client saying that the appraisal waiver is understood and that they are waiving the entire amount for X and Y. And when our acceptance of the offer is essentially based on the client emailing their agent, and then the agent forwarding us that email to confirm that they are absolutely understanding. Because I don't trust that the agent on the other side even understands what they're offering half the time. So it's a way to make sure that we have something to go back to. And I can tell you, just the act of that email coming in, we have like almost zero deals fall apart. I haven't had a deal fall apart in forever. I mean, I can't even remember when one fell apart, especially on the listing side. So that's the due diligence piece that we do as listing agents so that we don't have deals fall apart.
And for everybody on the call, it's not that Glenn's in a magical market. It's because you also position it strategically to get multiple offers. Is that true?
Oh, 100%, Rob. Yeah, anywhere between 5 to 10% below asking, below the market price.
Yeah, so that's an intentional collection of multiple bids, because then you have leverage in the transaction, right? Because if they say no, you're like, that's okay, Glenn, we're going to go to the next one, and you're not just kind of bluffing or BSing the process. So so there's a tip. If you can get those multiple offers early on in the process, then you can have that leverage. And how much of are you going, if it's $20,000 above ask, are you just giving them an appraisal at the ask level, Glenn, or you're not even giving them any appraisal?
It's a complete waiver when they waive. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we've received some that have amounts that are, if they're 100,000 over and they're only covering 75. In those instances, we look at it like the next best offer is less, so we'll move ahead with it.
Right, but you are giving them, if it's a 420,000 and you're getting a 450 offer, you're giving them an appraisal of 420, or you're not even doing that?
No, it's the price that they said they're offering.
Okay, that's very strong and bold, Bobby.
But I think, Rob, the one critical piece to that, Rob, though, is you have to be sure that the buyer understands. And if you're not representing the buyer in the transaction, there has to be a mechanism to make sure that they fully understand it. Otherwise, when the attorney comes back and tells them to make the change, the attorney's going to walk all over what they promised. And then all things go bad once that goes bad. So I'm a huge believer that you have to make the agent on the other side reach back to the client and give you a correspondence that says they understand what their offer is based on your concerns.
Yeah.
So Glenn, do you ever use a bomb or whatever your bomb equivalent is to send an email back saying, hey, we have multiple offers on this property. My client is doing this, knowing that they may forward that to their client?
I do it every time. Yeah. I smile because you know the answer, but yes, it's a video every time.
Right, because lazy and incompetent agents will tend to just focus. Like, can you have your client acknowledge that this is what they're willing to do? They'll forward that, and then the video email will be there, and you probably even get tracking to see that their clients watched your video a few times, correct?
Most of the times they just give a thumbs up to the video, and then I'll reply, is the thumbs up acknowledgement? And they'll say yes.
So that's a huge game changer, because you really can't talk to their client, but you can talk to their client through video if they're forwarding it. Bobby Golden, you had another contribution?
Yep. So I'm not disagreeing with Chief Baker in the least. That's always a great plan A, but a plan B could be where you put a cap a cap. If they don't want to work with an appraisal waiver, you say something to the effect of, if it underappraises, the buyer will pay up to $10,000 above the appraised value. So I guess real easy arithmetic. If the sale price is $520 and it appraises at $510,
they still have to go forward.
They still have to move forward. If it appraises at
500,
then whether it's $5,000 or $10,000, they just have to come up that amount. And I myself, I've been putting deals together with that addendum in there.
Yeah, I love that one too as a plan B. I will say though, for me, 3 times recently where we were very competitive and we put some kind of a cap, meaning they took the next best offer, which was guaranteed, especially if it was, and a couple times it was cash. So they'd rather have the definite because then they're back at the same point if it didn't appraise where the cash offer was. So even though ours was better, they must have thought it wasn't going to appraise. So that was my experience.
Yeah. So I'm looking here at just some notes I put down. Is set clear expectations from the onset. If you ever have like a listing, right, and you don't set the expectation about how you price it, and you get 5 offers in day one, what's a seller going to say if you don't set the expectation?
Too low.
Too low, right? They say we should ask for more, right? And it's hard once you've had that conversation. Once they've brought that up, it's hard for you to it almost sounds like you're trying to defend what you did and not that you expected that to happen, right? And then they might get greedy and say, you give us bad advice. We should have asked 50,000 more. And we all know that they would have had 0 offers in that scenario. So setting the expectations up front, I think, is huge. Putting it in writing, like both Bobby and Glenn do, where you either throw the appraisal contingency out or you limit it, as Mr. Golden suggests. How about in Missouri? Dave, you're in the center of my Hollywood squares. What's the best practice that you're seeing, Dave Townsend? Oh, he looks like he's busy.
Well, no, I was just going to say, we don't do a whole lot we do what we call a gap clause, but we don't do a whole lot of that anymore. We were doing it real actively, which we just don't do much of that at this time. But we were when we were negotiating heavily, even a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Well, I'm gonna task our leadership team to maybe look at the last 5 fall throughs that we've had and just report back to me and see if there's some preventive items that we could do to have eliminated those going forward. All right, because we have the benefit of having a much broader group of transactions to look at. So setting the expectations up front, controlling the timeline, setting expectations, just like you can set expectations for a listing that, hey, if we get it right, we're going to get multiple offers, and that means that we priced it correctly. setting expectations for clients on home inspections, right? And, when there is a unique property that somebody's buying, the way appraisals get done, we've all had transactions where it's a good deal for the buyer, but because it's compared square footage and this and that, they're not going to give you credit for a brand new roof. Like there's no item on an appraisal saying that Mr. Townsend, this property is worth a lot more than the other one because the roof, they put a $60,000 brand new roof on last month. But if the other one that sold has a 15-year-old roof and you have a brand new roof, you need to explain to your client that, hey, you know what, this is not going to add any value to the appraisal, but does it have any value to you, right? They're going to say yes. So I would say, Dave, if this thing appraises for 15 or 20,000 less because they don't put a line item on for a new roof, or they don't necessarily put a new item on for, they upgraded to a high SEER HVAC system, that the client's prepared to continue to move forward. Now, these are more fringe cases where an appraiser can't make the value, but clearly, I don't know who I was talking to when I was in Missouri, but we had this conversation that, hey, they're not going to add money to the value. I think it was Rob, who helped us get Andrea. I was talking to him, and he was saying you can't. A seller can't come to you and say, I want to ask more because I have a new roof. It's not something that you're generally going to be able to get that value back. So if we set these expectations early on, it's much easier to address when the issue comes up. Because if the issue comes up and we haven't addressed it, it's a much more emotional and risky prospect, in my opinion. A couple other things. Oh, here's my favorite. Don't try to resolve things via text or email. Have a conversation to resolve these things. If you're getting into a text battle or an email battle back with attorneys or other agents, pick up the phone and, read the tone in their voice, right?
And Rob, just to comment on that, I'd say that any conversation that you have or where issues of the contract are discussed, you should definitely follow them up with an email so that you have an email trail that you can use in the future.
Documentation.
Yes.
Converse and then document it in writing. All right, here's a big one. Has anybody ever had a transaction where the other agent makes a bigger deal out of something than it is? I'll put two hands up, right? Being able to control the emotions, right? Because some agents are just programmed for drama, right? You've seen them. They're programmed for that drama. The smallest thing happens, like, oh my God, the deal is going to fall apart. We need to be able to manage around those drama queens and kings. Bob, you have another comment?
Rob, it's just dialogue that I'd like to share. So when somebody says my house is worth more because I just put on a new roof, I explain to them that it adds to the marketability of the property, no two ways about it, but it doesn't always translate to value. So I would say, Mr. Lazar, just keep in mind, marketability is very, very important, but it doesn't always translate to value. You have a roof, you put a new roof on, you have an advantage, but it doesn't equate to more value because you need the roof anyway.
So Bobby, what you're saying is on our building that the new roof we put on is not going
to. Well, that's different because it's us. So that's a whole different ball of wax.
Okay.
So those rules don't apply.
All right. But no, I mean, it's about setting expectations. How about de-escalating situations, right? Because would you all agree that we tend to attract people who are more dramatic in this industry as opposed to rational, right? Sometimes their default panic, especially if they're not high producers, a little thing comes up like, oh, Bobby, I knew this deal was going to die, for what, they didn't change the air filter, so it's going to die. The seller's not going to put a new filter in. This deal is going down. So de-escalate the emotion from the transaction, over communicate, solve problems, don't amplify them. And for crying out loud, don't be creating adversity between the other agent, right? You both have a client, but you also have a common goal. This is a win-win situation. Use diplomacy in your resolution process. And this kind of goes hand in hand, but stay emotionally neutral, right? I know that we're a high emotion crowd, but the more we can maintain our emotions in check, the better off we are to get the outcome that we want. Liz, you have a comment? Or did you hit it by mistake?
Yes. No,
Okay.
no, I did. I think Sandy also put in the comment about like work from collaboration. I just had a deal release and sent over the mutual release like signed by our broker and was like, sorry this didn't work out. I hope we can work together on something in the future. And the agent replied with, you know what? Even though this didn't work out, I would love to work with you again. And I think that was a situation where like we had it was an investment property with two investors where the seller wasn't willing to do things, the buyer is only getting willing to do certain things, but keeping that communication and line open allowed us to both like put our heads together and try and come up with solutions to try and get us over the finish. And when we'd exhausted all options, we both were like, well, we tried. You know what I mean? And I think that is unusual. I think a lot of times when you get to the mutual release part, there are people who are like, F you and like whatever. And there's lots of emotion from the agent. And I think when you can be, both parties can be level headed, you can try and get there. And, if I think the most deals are falling apart over inspections because of lack of like understanding of seller's not going to fix everything. The house is not perfect. You need to learn as a buyer how to fix some things. And as a seller, you have to be reasonable about what you're going to do. And just try and like get it over the finish, whatever way you can. But also the collaboration part, because you can have a release and then not be at each other's throats because you tried and communicated.
So, maybe Liz, from what you're talking to me about, is if we were to extend the concept of an appraisal waiver to a home inspection threshold, right? Which would say, I remember when things were getting heated up before we completely waived inspections, there would be very restrictive inspection parameters, like it's major structural, environmental, and mechanical items only, right? And you can't bring up, minor cosmetic items or even, hey, this system is old. If it still works, check the box, we're moving forward, right? So here maybe another ounce of prevention is going to be worth, 10 pounds of cure, right? And in most markets, you think we can ask that, hey, if there are any items that are under $5,000 that, I just want to make sure that you're okay excluding those. And if they're not major mechanical, right? So right now the buyers are putting what they want in there. If we counter back with limiting the inspection criteria, then the buyer has a decision to make if we're on the listing end. And if we're on the buying end, I think we could set that expectation.
Rob, and your prevention point too, I think is super important when it comes to listing agents as well. So if you can position, we price a home based on certain assumptions. We don't look under the ground at the septic most of the time in advance. We don't know if the roof is necessarily leaking because we're not going up and doing a full inspection before. So if you say to your client during the process of listing, when you bought your home, this home that you love and that you're moving from, if the septic was bad, what would you have expected the seller to do? When you ask those questions, you're presupposing what's going to occur. And if it does occur, you can bring them back to that, right? So it's prevention. And I think the same thing goes for buy side and for the sell side. You have to be smart enough to address these things so that they have a recall memory to them so that they're not a problem later on. And I truly attribute that to why we have so few deals fall out.
And Glenn, in terms of even guiding people, and I know that you probably do this without even thinking about it, but when you go on a listing appointment, you're telling them all the things that you do to protect them at that appointment so that they understand the value prop. And then you're pushing that into the contracts that come in, like the waiving of the appraisal. Absolutely, right? There is no appraisal contingency. Limiting home inspections, I think, would be probably the biggest deal killer that's out there, right? And if I'm going in, Glenn, if I'm making an offer on your property with my client, and you say that, look, this is only major structural, and there's a $5,000 threshold before we even entertain any adjustments, I think that would probably eliminate at least half, if not more, of the inspection items that come up. Does anybody think that there would still be more than half that would arise if you limited them to, major structural mechanical, put a $5,000 gap there? Oh, and here's another one. At my home seminar that we did, one of the agents said that there was a failed or a failing septic line, right? And I think Denise, if Denise is on, said that you can get a warranty, or you can get a subscription for like $5 a month that will cover that if it needs to be replaced. Is anybody familiar with the insuring of a septic line? Hello, anybody?
Sewer lines, yes, not septics.
I'm sorry, I meant sewer line. Yes, not that. Misquoted. Duly noted. Yes,
Rob,
Denise.
I just want to share, the program that we sponsor does have water and sewer line coverage, plus it does also have additional coverage for septic and wells. And absolutely, the warranty can support in keeping deals together. I've seen it on a daily basis. So it's a tool, and I was just emailing out to some of our participants right now so that they have it, the program specifics and marketing material.
So if the mechanicals are getting to be a little bit old, or there's a concern, they put a camera through the sewer line, and there might be signs of the sewer line bending or something because of a tree, we can put that into the expectation, right? Hey, you know what? This house is 55 years old. The systems may be getting old. You can protect yourself with a $800 warranty, and you don't need to worry about if the sewer line goes, right?
Absolutely.
There's
There's a
another way.
there's a lot of positive features, Rob, that are there, and I will send it out to all the participants today so that they have it for the future. And we can do multiple states. I'll confirm all the states.
Denise, in the seminar, the agent said that the buyer came up with an estimate for 18,000 to replace it. The seller came up with an estimate for 10,000, and rather than do the work, they gave them the 10,000. I'm just thinking, if we set the expectation up front, the homeowner that was living there, okay, might have been a 50, 60-year-old house. The water wasn't backing up. There was no active problem. If you were to say, hey, we recommend, this is an older house, buy a warranty for $800 a year and you're covered. And then you might not have even had to address that, right? Or it would have been even softer to address that issue, and you could have maybe saved $10,000 for your seller, in my opinion.
And Rob, another feature we have, they can, during the selling process, add coverage on to protect during the process of accepting offers in, close on time, and then it converts over for another 12 months for the homeowner that secures the property. So there's a tremendous amount of advantages. And as I mentioned at the seminar, the attorneys absolutely say that they see on a daily basis where homeowners' warranty coverages does keep the deals together. Happy to help anyone out who needs it.
Nicole, thank you, Denise. Nicole, you have a comment?
Yeah, kind of just a comment. So I agree as far as working with listings, that being proactive is paramount. Like, it's key to being able to navigate and prepare your folks when things come up on inspections. But also, like, on the other side for buyers, I'm seeing from my agents a lot of I guess babysitting, where you're working with agents on the other side that are either uneducated or just, unexperienced. And so a lot of times you're managing both sides, you know what I mean? And so, like, something that came up yesterday, I had an agent come to me and I'm like, well, give them a gimme. So there's like a inspection report comes back. They know what they want, and they know, the high price item, and then like there's a couple other things. I feel like if you give them a gimme, have you guys heard of this before? So you put both things on the repair request. One thing that they probably won't do that is more exorbitant, and then something else that you really want. And then they end up saying, well, we're not going to do that, but we'll do this. And so it's just kind of like I mean, it's probably commonplace here. I saw some heads nodding where you're, being an educator as we are and just letting your buyer know that, hey, this is more realistic, and then trying to negotiate. And then also having relationships with agents, just being in the trenches, it helps if you've established a relationship, whether a deal's fallen through, like someone said before, and you created that. This person is educated. This person is somebody I want to work with in the future. That helps when when you're negotiating. So all those things help, to.
So here's another one that you can layer on that one there, Nicole. If you're on the other side, you could say, you know, my seller was selling this as is, but they're willing to do the $600 repair. I hope your client recognizes what a great agent you are and an excellent negotiator, right? So you praise the agent, they forward that to their client. Their client feels great about the experience, and you basically have resolved the matter. Has anybody ever done anything like that where you kind of, elevate the agent? You intentionally send them an email they're going to forward to their client, and that
they look like the hero.
Correct. You make them look like the hero, and then they feel better about moving forward with the transaction. Scott, you probably mastered that. You might have even taught that to me.
Yeah, yeah. What I like to do as well. Thanks, Rob. But you taught me more than I could ever teach you. But the main thing I try to do too with inspections, you get the laundry list, and I tell my sellers, they're like, "Well, I'm not doing all this." I was like, "Listen, there's like 20 line items. Let's say, hey, let's knock out all the little things. These are easy things, low cost. Do that. You send it back, and it looks like we've accomplished a lot of the list." And then that big ticket item to the buyer is not as big of a deal. It's not overwhelming. So I find out that works as well.
Hey, Rob, if I can throw one in here, I think Nicole jumped on it, but I wrote it down when Denise was talking. I think one of the keys that you have to understand when you're talking about negotiating is sometimes the best piece of the puzzle is understanding the agent on the other side of the transaction. And the reality is, like, having those conversations, I tell all my girls, like, you do not write an offer until you've had a conversation with that person. And if we can't get a hold of them, then we're going to submit the offer. But having an initial conversation with somebody, you get to understand what kind of person they are. So when you get to the negotiation of, and really the biggest negotiation is probably repairs, 100% trying to get stuff done. And I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to forget all these, but they always say that you're going to deal with competitors, collaborators, compromisers. I think it's avoiders, if I'm not mistaken. One of those four categories with everyone you negotiate with is going to come up. And if you understand that if the other person's a compromiser, then I know I need to go in at a certain place where I know they're going to come back because they want to feel like they got to that middle ground, which is why one of the best negotiators in the world has said, never split the difference, because you're going in knowing that it can actually be a benefit to you knowing that personality. If you've got a competitor who has to win, like Nicole said, throw them a bone. They feel like they got to tell you no because of that. So understanding it, well, we can go over all of them, but I think the best thing about, summarizing all this is if you understand who you're dealing with will make the negotiation go a lot smoother because you can control the rhetoric of what's going to happen when they have to win. Throw them something that you don't care about so they feel like they won. It makes it go smooth. But it's easier, especially for new agents that don't understand these things, that we can help them, but also stop them from stepping in their own mud, if you will.
Jason, you just said a Chris Voss quote. The famous one that I like
Chris
is
Voss is the negotiator.
He's really good. So he also said, "How am I supposed to do that?" Like you're supposed to work together, and if they ask you something ridiculous, like they're supposed to explain it to you. How am I supposed to do that? I thought that was great. It makes everybody feel like we're part of a team and we have to collaborate and we have to work it to get it to the finish line.
Collaborators are the best people to negotiate. Some of my best friends, honestly, they go somewhere between competitors and collaborators because they want to win. They like to win. That's their job to win. One of my best friends, and some people here probably know her, but Alexis Bolin, I had one of the worst transactions with her because we kept just going at it. And we have so much respect for each other because neither of us backed down from what we knew was right. And we got to the place and we knew going into it exactly how they were going to fight aimlessly for their client. We knew going in what it was going to be, but yet we got along just fine. And we still talk today and we still have, great conversations on the phone. But she is one, if you ever have to sit on the other side of the table, going into it, she's going to advocate for her people like no one's business. And if you know that, it's going to make the negotiation go a little better, as is where a brand new agent, they might avoid, or they might get into a compromise where like, okay, we just have to come to a mutual deal. And an experienced agent knows how to take advantage of that. The avoider is the one that's the hardest. They don't want to do anything. So anything you send them, they're just going to have it dealt with. And that can be detrimental. But if you know that, I think it's beneficial.
I just put something in the comments here, which is what if I want to know your opinion? This is just my polling the experts. If you put on a counter to even if you sign it, you put it on there, inspection item, we accept your offer. However, inspection items are limited to structural, mechanical, safety, and environmental. And the first 5,000 of any items are assumed by the purchaser. So it's the responsibility of the buyer. Because that's kind of a nuisance in most areas, right? To 2,500, 3,000, whatever. So look, if you're buying it, it's a pre-owned 45-year-old, 70-year-old, 30-year-old house. So as part of paragraph 10.3, buyer will only request credit or repair if any of that exceeds. So that's in your contract, Sandy?
We tend to write in
We
if
have
we get into, sorry.
I'm sorry, Rob, we have clauses we provide for our agents. And that's a clause that they can like click on the button and put it in the contract if they want to.
Our contracts in Florida as well. General warranty repair.
I would like to even limit it to anything that's visual that you can see is excluded, right? Because when you walk through the house, you saw this, right? So that would be an excluded item, and we just further limit it to just these structural, mechanical. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying I'm right, but that's why I want to get your feedback, because that would prevent a percentage, whether it's a small percentage or a majority, these inspection discrepancies that somebody has to win, right? And they're killing the deal because they feel like they have to win, right? And if the agent, or even if we're doing it and we represent the buyer, right, putting that in there sets the right expectation for the buyer that, hey, this is normal stuff here. So we don't have any right to ask for that. It falls within the parameters or the tolerance level.
And I love the gentleman's suggestion about sending the video to the client, and that would be a perfect place to put it. And just to confirm, the seller feels they've priced the home considering the older roof.
Current condition.
Yeah.
We tend to, if we want to really limit it, we'll put in whatever the repair limits are, general WDO permit, and an amount. And then if we want to limit it further, a lot of times we'll say, and the items requested can be exclusive only to lender or insurance limiting issues, because in Florida, everything is insurance. So if the insurance comes up, the seller has to fix it. It's almost a no-go.
Right.
No insurance, no loan, no deal.
And Jason, I would say that, perhaps in certain circumstances, if it's an estate, right? A lot of times people will have to accept it for what it is because that's the way that we present it, right?
Yep.
Even if it's an insurance issue. And, I think that we need to be maybe just a little bit more open into, how we think about that. Because you might be able to say, look, we priced it for you to accept it. There's likely to be insurance requirements. That's the responsibility of the buyer. Now, Jason, when somebody's real excited about buying a house, they might accept that, right? But if they have a lot of time to think about it, they might overthink it and then start asking for stuff. And the worst thing they could do is say, no, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Sure. Oh, no. Well, I was going to answer your question. We accepted the roof because a lot of times we'll look up the permit. We know up front a roof's going to be required 15 years or more. It's a done deal. You're going to have to do it. So that's part of our listing presentation. But a lot of times, like everything else, is a sink leak, a ground on an outlet, the basic electrical, plumbing, HVAC that is going to be required for insurance anyway. Those might be $400 or $500. And I always tell my sellers, look, you are not going to allow this deal to fall apart where the buyer can't get insurance, and the only way they can do it is to escrow the funds, and some of the lenders don't want them to escrow, or they may not have the cash to do it. You have to commit and know this going in. Now, it may not come up. If the roof comes up, depending on the way the deal's structured, there is ways to do it, but I always prepare them, you're going to have to replace this roof. If the other agent doesn't request it, they find a better way to do it, then my seller wins. If they go in knowing that they're probably going to do this, then they're expecting it. And when they don't have to do it, they're pleasantly surprised. But that way they don't bring any surprises.
A lot of what we're talking about here, Jason, is about, setting the expectation so that
Exactly.
because if you knew somebody was going to nitpick you on a transaction and you had at least two offers, then you would basically like to rewind the clock and say, all right, who's willing to accept everything except for X, right?
Sure.
But as soon as you accept it and you don't build that in and reinforce it, then it becomes an item of controversy, which could kill a deal, because most transactions are killed not because of the dollar amount, but they're killed because it's an emotional factor, right? Oh, I'm paying $700,000 for this house. I don't want to buy it if it has a broken X, right? Or if the water heater is going to beyond its useful life, right? So that's the expectation part.
Mm-hmm.
So, this
My
is really
neighbor down the street got this much, and I put this sunroom on the, in, or I put this, improvement in, and somebody hasn't let them know what that actually adds as far as value goes.
Or a bad agent just not willing to explain to their client the realities of what exactly, what Nicole's saying. If we don't set the expectation, we're usually a causal effect of some of the cancellations, and we have to take responsibility for that.
And Jason, Nicole, everybody who's contributing here, I would even if you put it into the agreement, right, and it's a counter offer, it's clear as day, right? I would still have a call with the other agent and say, hey, I just want to make sure we put this in here because it's important to my seller that we don't have to deal with minor items that are common in a house of this age. I think that makes a whole lot of sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Sure.
even if they do they inspect the sewer line and it says that there might be a little bit of bowing on it. Well, you know what? You can get an insurance policy for when it does go, whether it's in a year or 20 years, for $4 a month. So my seller is not going to be prepared to do that. And then you don't have that. You don't have that issue that I think, Scott, you mentioned that wasn't yours the one where you negotiated the bad sewer line.
Yeah, we had to negotiate that down. Because listen, that's a field. It's like septic. They create their pricing essentially. So
Right,
the numbers get big and they get scary.
But if you said, hey, for $4 a month you can insure it so that if it eventually fails you get a new one, then you might have been able to get out of that without a $10,000 credit, right?
Yeah, so I have the buy on that, and essentially that's how they were comfortable moving forward at just the 10,000 versus the 15 to 18,000 quote they got from their plumber. I call American Water, and they offer that insurance you're talking about, and it's like, hey, it's not going now, but when it does go, you're covered, but you have that 10K there if you need it.
So Scott, here's how I would have played that one. As I would say, look, if I were the listing agent here, I would not allow a buyer to make this request because I would make them aware early on that you can insure it for $4 a month. However, I'm going to see if I can get you $10,000, and let me just see here. And I would ask you, so take 10,000 divided by 4, and they would go 10,000 divided by 4 a month is, so you're covered for 2,500 months when you move in here, and everything else is profit, right? You'd make them feel like a hero buying a place that needs a new sewer line, correct?
Sure.
Just by changing the conversation around a little bit. So I think this is really good dialogue, and if we have conversations beyond the writing that we do, or we use video to forward that we know they're going to forward to their client, then if they're going to kill the deal, we'd all rather have the deal die before it goes into contract, right?
Sure.
Because then you have an opportunity to take something else. So Deborah, you got your hand raised again? Maybe not. Deborah Wickenhauser, no?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, so I have a question. I have a transaction that we're supposed to close in 2 weeks, and it could fall apart any minute due to inspection. So we just did, for major items, we're not going to nitpick over minor cosmetics. So one of the issues is they have the Federal Pacific breaker box for the electrical panel, which they don't make them anymore because they were a fire hazard. And so a lot of times it's not up to the electrical standard code. So when we asked them about the electrical panel, they said, oh, that's an upgrade. And then the other thing is, like, there was like a lot of water leaks underneath the sink, and the wood was all wet, and the sheetrock by the shower was wet. And when you turned on the shower, the water was squirting out the handles and not the shower head. So stuff like that. But I spoke with the agent because I'm on the buy side. We gave 10K over ask on a condo, and the agent is just like very aloof. Like, basically, they're not doing anything. And the attorney is a commercial real estate attorney. It's the uncle of the seller who states how much he hates doing residential real estate. So, like, they're just not going to, like, do anything. And this isn't cosmetic. Like, the Federal Pacific, the electrical panel, that's like a major fire
That's
hazard.
a fire hazard.
They don't even
Sure.
make them anymore. It was
So
I'm not getting anywhere.
yeah, I mean, sometimes, I'm gonna say this and not admit saying it. Stupid is stupid. Like, you can't control like somebody who's not, logical. Now, my only question to you is, did you know that there was a Federal Pacific when you made the
No.
offer, or not until the
No.
inspection?
No,
So,
neither did
so
the agent, the listing
right,
agent.
right. But maybe one of the things, a lesson learned is in New Jersey, there's not a lot, but there's enough for it to be something to put on your checkbox when you're working with the seller and the buyer. And I would always point that out, because now you might have learned a really valuable lesson, Deborah.
Yeah.
And going forward, that if there's one that you'd put that in the offer, saying, look, this is a fire hazard, and we want, we're offering 10,000 more, but we expect the seller to change the box. So that
Right.
would be
And
my
the breakers are tripping in the house due to the
So
box.
Deb,
The GFIs.
Deb, what
Right.
town is
So-
that? Because typically
Aberdeen.
a CO Aberdeen, because a CO inspection, they're going to hit on that typically if it's not just a smoke cert. Most towns will call that out.
Does Deborah, if the town does require a CO and you contact the
I
township?
did. It was the fire department because it's a CO on fire. So since it was a fire hazard, I called up the township of the fire and I asked them if they went into a house and saw a Federal Pacific electrical panel, would that pass? And he said, if we can put the breakers on and off and switch them on and off without force, yes, we would pass it.
Okay, so
if it was working fine.
So Deborah, I don't want to go. We're at like 3 minutes left, and then for those of you who are in the Paris challenge, we're going to come back here, or I might just end this and we'll come right back. But so for that one, Deborah, I'm going to tell you, either you win and get a closing, or you get a lesson, and there you might be getting a lesson.
Thanks.
Right? You might be getting multiple lessons that you didn't want, but chances are you'll never have another Federal Pacific one kill a deal on one of your listings or one of your buys. So there's your lesson. And you can't control the other side.
Nope.
Look, this was a far livelier conversation than I anticipated. I've picked up some really good ideas. And I think it all goes around setting expectations, and it's not only setting expectations for the other side, right? It's setting expectations for our clients, because you might have the loveliest client, right? And then they read this home inspection, which makes it seem like the house is going to fall apart, because that's what home inspectors do, right? They point out the deficiencies, and we need to have it set up front so that we can bring them back to reality and keep the transaction moving forward. And it's not about selling our client out. It's almost protecting them from themselves, right? Because they become monsters, because this is like a big number. They literally read the report and then they go off. Like they just lose their logical, rational side to them. So hopefully, Sandy and all the managers here, that we can eliminate some of the fall through by proactively putting in and using some of these strategies to, keep buyers buying properties that they'd be satisfied with and not losing them over emotional interpretations of a report. And for goodness sake, let's make sure that we don't go emailing and texting back and forth with the listing agent. Let's have conversations with them, right? Let's have a conversation with the buyer's attorney if we're on the buyer side and they're freaking out about something or they're being otherwise unreasonable, and find out if there's a way that we can collaboratively work together to get them to the outcome. I mean, go back to the beginning is, buying a money pit at age 30 is better than waiting until 40 and buying the perfect house, right?
Right.
Some houses have limitations, but they're still a good value, right? So,
Can I comment something?
Absolutely.
What a fascinating conversation this morning. If anybody thinks that AI is going to replace this part of the real estate industry, I think that this conversation today has absolutely changed any of those thoughts you might have. It's incumbent upon us to continue to learn this facet of the business, because it is the value add that all agents that are well skilled bring to the table, and this is how we earn our money. I can't imagine AI replacing the most important part of the transaction, which is the part where we actually get the deal closed. And the negotiation skills are so priceless. What a great job today. Good job.
So Howard, I want to make a comment that I think that unfortunately, the people who probably needed this conversation the most aren't on this call. And I know that, we all know friends in our offices, and I would just encourage you to tell a neighbor, say, hey, maybe on Fridays hop on the call, because I think everybody took something away from today, and it's because of the collective intellect of all your peers. So, please, invite a friend, tell them to come on here. The more people that contribute, the better this meeting is, and the more value we take from it. So I couldn't end it better, Howard. Thank you. Thanks for your hour on a Friday. I know you're all busy.
Thank
Bye,
you,
everybody.
guys.
Thanks, everyone.
I'll see all the Paris Challenge people on the new Zoom. I'm ending this, coming right back.